All right, let's get right into it. We're going to unpack a really provocative theory about a coming global conflict. And this isn't just any theory. It predicts that the world's only superpower is heading for an absolutely staggering defeat, and at the hands of a nation it's been sanctioning for more than 40 years.
So it all starts with this really shocking prediction. The source material we're looking at attributes it to a geopolitical theorist named Professor Son, and the claim is as blunt as it is hard to believe, that the United States is on a collision course with a catastrophic loss in its next major war.
And that immediately begs the question, right? How is that even possible? How could a military with that much funding and technology possibly lose? Well, the theory we're exploring today suggests the answer has nothing to do with fighting a traditional war. So, to really get our heads around this, we first have to look at where this prediction is actually coming from and why some people are taking it very seriously. The source we're examining tries to build Professor Son's credibility by pointing to two of his earlier predictions. It claims he was right that Donald Trump would win re-election, and that he was also right that a major conflict between the US and Iran would follow. And it's on that foundation that the source presents his third, and by far most alarming, prediction that the US is going to be badly defeated. Okay, so now let's get into the real meat of the theory itself, and how this whole thing is supposed to play out. Because this isn't about tank battles or dogfights. According to the source, the entire strategy is built on a totally different kind of warfare. And that brings us to this key idea, asymmetric warfare. The entire theory really hangs on this concept. The goal isn't to go toe-to-toe with your enemy. It's about turning their greatest strength, all that expensive, complex technology, into their single biggest weakness.
So how would this actually work in practice? Well, the theory claims Iran doesn't get its own hands dirty. Instead, it activates this huge network of proxy forces all across the Middle East. The theory goes that these groups do the actual fighting, which lets Iran orchestrate the whole thing from a safe distance.
And this is maybe the most crucial point of the whole theory. The primary targets aren't American soldiers or military bases. No way. The master plan, according to this theory, is to completely bypass the military and go straight for the jugular, the U.S. economy, by attacking its key allies.
And the key weapon in this alleged economic war? Well, according to the source, it's almost unbelievably cheap. We're talking $200. And this example just perfectly illustrates the brutal logic of asymmetric warfare. The theory lays out this scenario. A cheap, simple drone takes out one critical piece of infrastructure, like a water desalination plant. Just like that, you could potentially trigger a massive humanitarian crisis for a key U.S. ally, causing a kind of chaos that a multi-million-dollar fighter jet is completely useless against.
But okay, crippling infrastructure in the Gulf is one thing. How does that directly threaten the United States, thousands of miles away? Well, the theory points to what it calls a ticking time bomb, right at the very core of America's economic power. And that bomb is the petrodollar system. For decades, the simple fact that oil is traded in US dollars has been the bedrock of the American economy. It creates constant, massive demand for the currency. But, the theory argues, what happens if that system suddenly breaks?
This slide really lays it out like a chain of falling dominoes. It's pretty fascinating. It starts with those proxy attacks. That stops the Gulf states from selling oil, which then cuts off the flow of petrodollars, which then stops all of their huge investments into the US stock market, especially into AI. And the final domino, the theory claims, is the bursting of what it calls America's financial Ponzi scheme, triggering a massive market crash. But wait a minute, you gotta be asking yourself, why can't the most powerful, most technologically advanced military in the world just stop this? Why can't they just swat these cheap, low-tech attacks out of the sky? The theory's answer is pretty stark. The US military is built for the wrong war. Its whole structure is basically a relic of the Cold War, designed to fight another superpower with equally big, expensive weapons. It's not designed to fight off a swarm of cheap, disposable threats. And this chart just hammers that point home. Wow. The source claims that when you're forced to use a $2 million missile to shoot down a $50,000 drone, or even a much cheaper one, you are losing the economic war. It doesn't matter what happens on the battlefield. It's an exchange rate that you just cannot sustain over the long run. And the result of that unsustainable trade-off is exactly what you'd expect. The theory alleges that the U.S. is just burning through its most advanced missile stockpiles at an alarming rate, even dipping into strategic reserves that were supposed to be saved for a potential conflict with another major power.
So, with all of these incredible risks on the table, why would a U.S. president allegedly lead the country into such a dangerous and maybe even unwinnable conflict? The theory we're exploring proposes a few different reasons.
So, Professor Sain's theory outlines 3 alleged motivations behind what the source calls this foolish decision. And they kind of range from the simple stuff, like military overconfidence, to personal gain, and then finally to a much more elaborate and conspiratorial hidden agenda. And this is where the theory takes a really dramatic turn. It claims that powerful secret societies are the ones actually driving this conflict. It alleges these groups are following some kind of predetermined spiritual script that demands a great war in the Middle East, all to fulfill an end-times prophecy, no matter what the logical or economic consequences are for the rest of us.
So you take all these threads, the asymmetric warfare, the economic collapse, and these alleged hidden agendas, and it all leads us to the final, central paradox of this entire theory.
And this quote from the source material just sums it up perfectly. The ultimate argument is that any kind of conventional military win would come at such a catastrophic economic and geopolitical price that it would actually be a profound strategic defeat. So the predicted outcome here isn't just about a lost war. It's about the end of an entire era. The theory concludes that this conflict is what will effectively bury America's unipolar dominance and speed up the rise of a new, multipolar world order. And that's really the provocative question this theory leaves us with. It forces us to rethink what victory actually means in the 21st century. Is it possible to win every single battle and still end up losing the very foundation of your power?